Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Tuesday, so we are going to discuss feelings or emotions or attitudes that we can use for our antagonists and our protagonists. Some people call these sins and virtues. Let's look at them. First set is pride versus humility. Pride is a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements or the achievements of those with whom one is closely associated, or from qualities or possessions that others widely admire. Well, what exactly is wrong with that? We should have self-esteem, but pride in the sense of sin is improper and excessive self-esteem, also known as conceit, self-importance, vanity, smugness, snobbery. In the sin sense, we define pride as elevating one's opinions and thoughts above others. In other words, there is a fine line between healthy self-confidence and self-esteem versus over self-appraisal of a know-it-all or a person who can do no wrong, that kind of thing. Humility is a modest or low view of one's own importance. It is the freedom from pride or arrogance. Some definitions go as far as self-abasing, which is belittling or degrading of oneself. But I think that if you or your character is humble or shows humility, then you or he or she, your character, will ask for help, or they will listen to the opinions of others. A person with humility is not a know-it-all. When we create our stories, our antagonists usually have pride and belittle people around themselves, while our protagonists or our heroes, while confident, are still a bit humble. I will list Cruella de Vil again in the cartoon 101 Dalmatians. Cruella thought she was much better than Anita and Roger. She thought she was better than Horace and Jasper. In Superman, he had superpowers, but he was humble. What about Magneto in X-Men? He despised regular humans, and he had a lot of pride. So I kind of jumped there. Superman's protagonist, Magneto's antagonist. So they have the different things there. Let's move on to the next set of characteristics. Greed and generosity. Greed is an intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, materials, power, fame, or food, over and above one's needs. It can lead to maladaptive behavior patterns such as gambling, hoarding, trickery, and even theft. Greed can create a love of whatever the item is, the desire. Whatever you desire, you love. But whoever loves money or material or power or fame or food, they never have enough, thus creating an insatiability. A greedy person always wants more and will never be satisfied. I want more power. I want more fame. I want more money. I want more this, more that. They will never be satisfied. I'm reading right now Eleni trying to prepare for the channel, and the king in that story very much wants more power, more control, and he will not be satisfied. So this helps or enables a person to develop selfishness, anger, jealousy, and unhealthy competition. Let's look at generosity. Generosity involves giving to others, not simply in abundance or not simply anything in abundance, like I have 2 hats and only need one, so I'll give the one. No, that's not it. But rather giving those things that are good for others. Generosity also tends to enhance the true well-being of those to whom someone gives. Generosity is not just giving. It is about sacrifice. It costs you something, be it time or money or effort. If I just had 2 hats and I gave it the second one, that's not really costing me anything because I still have a hat. It's when I give away something that I would want or need myself, so it costs me something. Moreover, now this is important too. Moreover, there are no strings attached, meaning you just give without expecting something in return. Oh, I'll give you my extra hat, you give me your extra purse. No. That when you give generously, you're not expecting something in return. Most everyday heroes don't give their time, talent, and effort for the fame they sometimes receive in return. They're not thinking, oh, if I jump off this bridge and save the baby out of the car that is in the water, I'm going to get fame. No, they don't think that. They just say, oh, I need to save the baby. They jump in, they save the baby or the family or whatever they do. They're a hero. They get them back to safety and everybody's praising them. But they just acted generously and in the moment. They did not act to receive that fame. Now let's take a brief look at Scrooge McDuck for a minute. He is super rich and seems greedy. That's why he always goes on adventures looking for gold or riches. But his arch enemy, Glomgold, wants the easy way to get the riches. He wants to steal Scrooge's riches. Of course, Scrooge is not your typical hero. A lot of stories have the antagonist as greedy. They are insatiable. Sometimes they want the wealth or materials, but sometimes they want the power of fame. A lot of times they don't necessarily want to go get it themselves. Like Scrooge was willing to go on the adventure, look for the clues. And I'm talking about DuckTales, if you're wondering. But Glomgold just wanted to go take it from him and not do the hard stuff. Now, in Total Recall, the antagonist wanted power or control. In Star Wars, the Galactic Empire wanted power or control. In The Matrix, the computer or the Matrix wanted control over the humans. Many books or movies are based around an antagonist that is greedy and insatiable. Then the hero has to generously give of his or her time and talents. Most times the hero doesn't just buy his way out to save the people of the day. It's like, okay, here's a few dollars, you're good to go. No, they can't just do that. There's no buying people out of this tyranny. Leave a comment below about a greedy antagonist that you've read about or you've watched in a movie or you've seen in a show. Now let's move on to the next set of sins and virtues. Lust and chastity. Lust is a very strong or intense desire or need or to crave. Often it refers to sexual desire or urge. It may seem that at the heart of lust is selfishness or a lack of self-control. And those are contributing factors. But deep in the root of lust is often emptiness. So individuals may succumb to lust in a vain attempt to fill a vacancy in their life. If your antagonist has an emptiness or a vacancy that needs filling, then can your protagonist save him or her in the end? Or in the very least, can your protagonist have compassion for your antagonist? Remember, you create all your characters, so you must know how each feels on the inside. What motivates your characters to act as they do? And you need to know what motivates your protagonist, what motivates your antagonist, what motivates. You need to know this for both of your characters. We've talked about your protagonist's breaking point. How much is too much strife for your hero to face? Maybe your antagonist isn't deeply evil, but extremely void inside. They have no love for self, or no friends, or no anything, So they want that, they lust for those kinds of things. And what they're doing doesn't really help them to get those. Chastity. Chastity is it has some adult definitions that I'm going to skip. So we're going to go to what's going to help you more with your characters. Chastity is purity in conduct and intention. It is restraint and simplicity in design or expression. It is personal integrity. A few synonyms are innocence, purity, modesty. A few antonyms are indecency, immodesty, vulgarity, wickedness. I again skipped some of the adult synonyms and antonyms because I don't write Harlequin romance novels, but you're certainly welcome to do so. And you can look up those other definitions if you decide to take that path. In some of these terms that we've discussed so far, you may feel some overlap with the definitions. So don't worry. As usual, there is no test. Just think of how you want your characters to behave or act. What are your characters' desires? Because that desire is going to help motivate them to act a certain way. If you think your character is greedy, say you develop your character, you think he's greedy, but your reader thinks the character is lustful, it doesn't matter. So long as there is some emotional connection between your character and your reader. And remember, I told you, your readers don't have to love all your characters. Your readers can hate some of your characters, especially your antagonist. And you can be like, oh, that's so wrong. If you get that emotionally involved with a story, the writer has done a really good job. Oh, if you really are against that antagonist, or if you're really for the protagonist, then the writer has done their job. So now let's look at the fourth set. Anger versus patience. Anger is a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. When your character becomes angry, he or she may exhibit destructive behavior, such as lashing out physically, excessive swearing, or threatening violence. Anger, though, is usually a secondary emotion, meaning we experience a primary emotion like fear, loss, sadness first. These emotions create feelings of vulnerability and loss of control, which makes us or our characters uncomfortable. One unhealthy way to deal with these feelings is by subconsciously shifting into anger. If your character becomes angry, it is important for other characters to know the underlying feelings so they can calm the angry character down. Or your other characters may avoid this character when they are at the height of their anger. In Miacha 1, Queen Zashura is the antagonist, and she gets very angry when her plans don't necessarily come together, and she starts throwing things, and she rants and she raves, and everybody just kind of stays out of her way because nobody knows how to calm her down. You just don't calm her down. Nobody can talk to her that way. Nobody has a relationship to talk to her to bring her down to a calm point. She just rants and raves, and Everybody is just really scared of her and they stay away from her. So that is anger there for that character. And you can read her bio if you visit my website, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Patience is the capacity to accept or tolerate, delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. A patient person is tolerant and has even-tempered perseverance. A patient person has self-control, meaning they are able to control their own reactions to the situation and endure it without complaining. Leave a comment below on characters in books or movies and whether they're a protagonist or an antagonist, and if they are patient people or angry people. Our fifth set of sins and virtues is gluttony versus temperance. Gluttony is habitual greed or excess in eating or an inordinate relationship with material things. You can also define it as an ingratitude for the goods we possess. Now, as a child, my parents always told me to clean my plate. So I had to eat when I wasn't hungry. My parents told me wasting food was sinful. Later in life, I learned that gluttony was worse. First and foremost, as a child, I didn't fix my plate. So my wasting food wouldn't have been my fault. It wouldn't have been something I intended to do. I wasn't intending harm. But the gluttony that I learned as a child, I carried for a long time in my life, and it affects my health. I will still overeat if I'm not careful, because my stomach doesn't know when I'm full anymore, because I've done it so much that it's turned that off. So I have to be really careful and try to temper my eating. So the next term, of course, is temperance. Temperance is the quality of moderation or self-restraint. Temperance is moderation in action, thought, or feeling. It is a habitual moderation in the indulgence of the appetites or passions. It is the practice of self-control, abstention, discretion, and moderation. Another translation is sound-mindedness. Now, I know you're saying, it is a good thing there is no test, because we've had self-control or restraint in 3 of our virtue definitions so far. There's no test. No test. Let's just move on. Next, we have envy or jealousy versus charity. Envy is a painful feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or luck. Jealousy, which is slightly different, even though most people consider the 2 words synonymous. Jealousy is feeling threatened, protective, or fearful of losing one's position or situation to someone else. Jealousy can imply hostility. As a child, I was super jealous of my sister. She had the good looks, she had her mother's love and favoritism. I guess you can say I was quite the sinful child. Although pride was not one of my sins, I had little to no self-esteem. Charity is the voluntary generosity and helpfulness in giving of help, typically in the form of money or other assistance to those in need or suffering. A few synonyms of charity are clemency, grace, leniency, and mercy. These synonyms mean a disposition to show kindness or compassion, while charity stresses benevolence and goodwill shown in a broad understanding and tolerance of others. Okay, our last pair of sins and virtues is laziness versus diligence. Laziness is the quality of being unwilling to work or use energy, or simply idleness. A lazy person is disinclined to do activity or exert energy. They are not energetic or vigorous. The adverse effects of laziness are low moral integrity, mental stagnation, and intellectual degradation. Now, a lazy antagonist will be someone you fight, but then they aren't very active, so your protagonist forgets about them and doesn't prepare as well as he or she ought to prepare. If you have a lazy person on the protagonist side, then their laziness might help undo plans or progress for your protagonist. Your protagonist has all these plans and they want to do it, but the lazy person is like, oh yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it. You know, things need to be done on a certain time or within a certain time frame. That might actually hurt the protagonist in the end or throughout the story to build some more tension for you. Now, in Jurassic Park, the first movie, Dennis Nedry is an antagonist. He seems lazy on the island, but he is actually greedy. And he is willing to sell embryos after he steals them. In order to steal the embryos, he has to shut down the security systems. And then no one can go around his programming to put the security back online because he wasn't lazy in his programming. When you view him as lazy, you overlook his greed. This is a great tactic to use to make it seem like your character is committing one sin when really another sin is driving them. Okay? So that kind of bait and switch is what I think they call it. So the next term, diligence, is careful, persistent work or effort. Diligence is steady, earnest, and energetic effort. It is devoted and painstaking work and application to accomplish an undertaking. Some synonyms are assiduity, attention, application, perseverance, self-discipline, thoroughness, working hard, or industriousness. I talked about synonyms at one point, so if you're wondering why, you don't always want to use the same word over and over and over in your story. So you can say diligent at one point, and then you can say, industrious. And so that gives more flavor to your writings if you use your synonyms. Anyway, back to the script today. If a person or character has diligence, you can count on him or her to perform tasks with thoroughness and an effort from start to finish. We can count on him or her to follow through on commitments and responsibilities. These are people we want to be around. Okay, that's a lot of terms, especially when you added in all those extra synonyms I gave you today. But I like synonyms because it helps you kind of see a more rounded definition or version of the word that you're defining. Helps you kind of get some more of the nuances of the word. So, and again, it helps to flavor your writing to where it's more pretty and colorful and stuff. It's not just diligent. You don't want to read the same word over and over. That's a lot of terms. But there is no test. Just like always, there is never a test. Now, sometimes it is hard for me to make the bad guy or the antagonist really bad. So these sins or bad characteristics can help me and you develop our antagonists. These can test our heroes or our protagonists. The virtues are what we want our heroes to choose. Of course, no one is perfect. Not even our protagonist. We could have our protagonist start to sin or cause harm, but then back off and choose the virtue. Remember, when we are building to the climax, we are testing our protagonist. If it were easy, then everyone would be a hero. I, of course, don't want you memorizing definitions. I want us to have fun. If you get stuck, especially with how bad your antagonist should be, then go through the list of sins and add one or some of those characteristics to your antagonist. It will be your choice on whether or not your antagonist is redeemable or not. Let's review the list once again, and I will post it below the video so that you can just screenshot it or whatever. So 1 was pride versus humility. 2, greed versus generosity. 3, lust versus chastity. 4, anger versus patience. 5, gluttony versus temperance. 6, envy or jealousy versus charity. 7, laziness versus diligence. Leave a comment below on your sins or virtues. I told you my sins. My virtues are patience and diligence. Join me Friday for chapter 11 of Tahia, Pursuit. And I will tell you that when I read through that just recently, I saw some foreshadowing in that chapter, so I will alert you now to that. Join me Tuesday for writing prompt. We're going to pull out our cave that we've written about twice, and we are going to add a scene before our cave. So we had the cave, we saw the cave, and I went ahead the second time with the fearful one, not the the pleasant one that we went splunking in, but the fearful one, and I added to that. And so now I'm going to have us write a scene of before. What was our planning like? What did we have supplies? What was our purpose before we went to that cave, before we found that cave? So we're going to write that. It's going to be fun. Visit my website, WritewithMykela.com, and read some character bios. You could read about Zashura that I mentioned earlier. I think I've mentioned her in a film before, a video before. But you could also read about Allison in Operatives 1. Allison has a lot of skills, but she doesn't boast about them. I'm not sure that trait or characteristic is in her bio, but it's definitely in the story. Don't forget that Nano Wrimo is coming up. It starts November 1st. So register your story. Get ready to write a novel during the National Novel Writing Month. It's free to sign up. It's a great tool for inspiration, because as you're doing the competition, you're like, oh, I have to write. And you had to post every day, how many words you wrote and stuff. So it's kind of like an accounting of what you're doing, and it helps inspire you to write. But then after November is finished and you see that you wrote 50,000 words, you'll be like, oh, I can write 50,000 words in a month. And that'll inspire you to keep going. So it's free to sign up. It's a great idea to do. They have other tools you can use or not use on there that are also free. So I encourage you to visit Nano Wrimo, and that's Nano for the Nano, and the Wrimo is WRIMO for the Wrimo. It's like the first 2 or 3 letters of each word. National Novel Writing Month. If you hit like and subscribe and the bell notification, then we will continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with Write with Mykela. Bye for now.